Good evening, everyone. We welcome you to this edition of Rural Insights video and podcast. And we're really pleased to have two distinguished public servants with us tonight, and that is the Mayor of Marquette, Jenna Smith, the Honorable Jenna Smith, and Commissioner Cody Mayer of Marquette. Both of them are dealing with very compounded problems that every city around the United States is dealing with, big, small, and middle. So let me just start with a concept of what are the biggest challenges each of you see for rural cities? You know, we have what I count as, five cities of size, and they're important cities. They're important to the economy of the region and the state. But what do you think are the challenges that you face in a rural city in the next few years?
Yeah, thank you, David. I appreciate you having us on. And I would say one of the biggest challenges is probably funding and revenue. And that's something that is a challenge for a city or a municipality of any size. But, in Marquette, especially, we're the biggest in the UP, or one of the biggest anyway, in any way you measure it. But that's difficult when we are geographically separated pretty far away from downstate from other similar sized communities. So we've got to really work with some of our wonderful partners and municipalities who are much smaller size and find a way to work together. Funding is an issue. I would say staffing can be an issue. We've got amazing talent in the city of Marquette, and we do everything we can to retain them. And when a position does come open, it can be pretty difficult to fill because, again, geographically, we're limited. But I would say that geography, I think we all know and love here in Marquette. To the north, we're limited by Lake Superior, but I wouldn't really say that's a limitation. That's probably one of our greatest resources. So it's definitely a catch-22, and we see the advantages as well, but doesn't make it any less of a hassle sometimes when we're dealing with funding, especially. Commissioner Mayer, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think you're right, Jenna. The lack of revenue that a lot of our communities here in the UP have, or I should say all of our communities have, it makes things a lot more difficult on our side, on the more local side of trying to figure out how to solve issues when they arise, and even trying to plan ahead. And just even on a couple issue basis that just our communities face, everyone's struggling with housing across the country right now, but rural communities struggle with having internet access for our residents. We struggle with having any sort of options when it comes to childcare. There's a lack of access to healthcare as well, typically in rural communities. And not only that, there is just less better paying jobs for residents to be able to afford any of those other things that, quite frankly, typically cost more to have up here.
So we did some research on Rural Insights using some students at Northern Michigan University helped me to look at childcare costs. And we've interviewed a lot of single mothers and fathers and parents, working parents, at $600-700 per child per month for childcare. Whether they're a professor, a police officer, a Walmart employee, it doesn't matter. Everyone's dealing with it. Is this an issue that you all deal with and think about in the city?
All the time. This is an issue that I am extremely passionate about as an individual. To date, childcare is not a direct strategic or master planning goal, but that's something I'm hoping that we can get into our questionnaire as we get into the master planning process in the next year or so. This is a topic that I spend some of my free time working on with folks at the state level, with folks in our community. As a mom to 2 children under the age of 5, it is extremely difficult to find childcare even when you have resources in this community. So I know those who do not have resources, it becomes even more difficult. I paid more for childcare for 2 kids than I do for my mortgage, and I know many people that do the same. And it is really hard to find quality childcare especially for children under the age of 3. So the infants are the most difficult in our community. And, on that same note, I had a conversation today about car seats. So, there are the traditional city things that I'm working on, but there are a lot of things on the side that, as an active member in the community and someone who people see as connected, you end up getting pulled in on. And that's kind of the fun of it for me, is trying to problem solve and help out in the community. But, childcare, again, to date is not a specific goal of the city of Marquette to be working on, but I do see it as a really strong correlation with our talent attraction and retention, with our, low income, middle income folks, and helping them kind of get set and get ahead. And I think it's a critical issue, especially coming out of COVID. I think we realized how dire that need has become.
Commissioner, you have a view on this? You want to jump in?
Anything? Yeah, as someone that has a toddler, I can attest to the fact that it is very difficult to find childcare that doesn't cost $65 a day. And like Mayor Smith pointed out, having a child under 3, there are additional hoops you have to go through, and typically more you have to pay for that. And it does make it difficult. And coming out of COVID, like you were talking about, David, a lot of people got to work from home remotely during the pandemic, and now we're coming out of that, and some people have to leave their jobs because they can't afford their job plus the daycare. It just doesn't make sense. And it is definitely one of those challenges that it's difficult to face, because, like Jenna said, I would love for the city to try to focus on this, but it's one of these issues where we need state partners to help with something like this. It's just not something the city can do on its own.
It'll be interesting to watch. We've been working on the data here on the impact of the child care tax credit, and the estimates federally and in Michigan, the governor said it reduces poverty by 50%. With that help of several $100s a month towards this, it'll be interesting to watch in Marquette how that happens. It's such a huge issue, and I hear it all the time as we're talking. I have to tell you, as somebody who looks at me a video knows I'm pretty old. So I had looked up the other day, found I don't know how I found it in an old file. I'm sort of a paper rat. I found my daughter, my oldest daughter, Erin, who lives and works in Marquette. In 1970, she went to Tiny Tots Child Care, or 71, in Marquette. And when I looked at the number, I'm embarrassed to even say, at the time we were students, and I was shocked at how much it cost me. And now it's just stunning where it's gone from to. One last thing on childcare, you don't have to answer this or not, but it is interesting to me that the two biggest employer, the hospital, a for-profit corporation, and Northern Michigan University, a not-for-profit, if you will, state entity, used to provide childcare. They no longer do. One of the arguments was, and this came up when I was president, and it happened prior years, was the regulatory costs and liability costs. But I was talking to a number of employees at both institutions going, my goodness, they both have so much empty space. Why can't the city, county, and those two entities work on some sort of child care piece? And I thought, that is sort of a way to find out if there's I suppose, is there a liability waiver of some kind or something? But it just is so prevalent. So I'll go on from there. So what do you think? Unless someone wants to say something to that.
I would just say that I've even a couple of years ago at MU, they were trying to get that started again, but the regulatory, the red tape that has to be gone through, especially for the hardest to serve population, children under the age of 3, is insurmountable. And that's something that I would really like to spend some more time with the state on, having some conversations and how we can make that easier on our childcare providers to be able to offer services. Other states do it differently and are able to provide care a little more easily with, safe conditions. So that's something that I've been advocating for.
Well, that'd be great. That'd be good. I think that'd be a great conversation. doing brainstorming with the state as how we can do that and be open to the ideas. I don't know if any of you watch Ted Lasso on TV, the series, but Ted Lasso, it's a wonderful series that I have a quote in my column this week, and he said, talking about being open to new ideas, and he said, don't bring an umbrella to a brainstorm. It's sort of, you got to be open to finding maybe there's some solution. Well, that's great. Let me go back to, you mentioned housing. That's the other one I hear when I'm interviewing people, and people write to us and comments. We get a lot of email from folks about affordable housing. I know you all have had a task force on it in Marquette. I know Sault Ste. Marie is working on the issue of affordable housing in their community as they get an influx of federal workers, and can you afford housing? And any thoughts on I know you're working on it and you have task force. Any thoughts or updates about the issue of Marquette City affordable housing?
Yeah, I would say that we had an ad hoc committee on affordable housing, which is really focused on workforce housing, attainable housing. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's to be able to afford living in Marquette for, your average worker, maybe a teacher, a firefighter, workforce housing, right? People who want to live and work in Marquette that can't afford to buy the $400,000 house that's just popped up on the market. Our next steps with that are to probably have a work session, and we're looking at maybe in December for the commission to look at the findings. There's several recommendations that committee put together, things like zoning, things like seeking partnerships, things like getting creative with developers and how we package things to make it more appealing for folks to offer that workforce type housing. So we're looking at all those options. We're pushing forward. At the same time, there's kind of an exciting task force at the county level that we just last night appointed one of our staff to. So while we are really excited to be working out at the city level, we know we can't do it alone. Our housing in the city of Marquette is limited. It would be great, and it is great, that we're starting to look at the more regional approach, because people live in Marquette Township, which is right next door. I mean, I can almost see it out my window here, and live in Marquette and work in Marquette, but they don't live in the city. And we need to be able to partner with those neighboring communities, and they call them bedroom communities at times, to live in Chocolate Township out in Harvey. And right. I know that's the same in a lot of places. So we're continuing to look at that and try to get creative. And I think you'll see some interesting potential developments coming in the news in future weeks and months.
Commissioner, any thoughts you want to add on housing?
Yeah, and I would just add, I would say at the start of this year, the housing market in Marquette kind of started blowing up even more than it already was. And what I started noticing, and I think a lot of people did, was that there just wasn't a sufficient amount of any of affordable housing in the city itself. So a lot of people that wanted to live in Marquette or by Marquette, and maybe they still worked inside city limits, they started all trying to get places in the surrounding communities. And as a result, the county as a whole, the housing market's cost of buying a home increased substantially. So I think this county approach and this partnership we're looking at, seeing if there's options there, I think it could be really beneficial, because the city itself isn't going to be able to solve it, but taking more of that regional approach might have some better results.
I think regionalism is a great concept to get us all to work throughout a place with only 300,000 people in it. Without regionalism, we're in trouble probably in the future. What any possibilities? The hospital, is no secret, is owned by a global hedge fund, a very, very wealthy one. They've got a lot of acreage of empty land sitting there. Any chances that the city and the state could come together with some state money and federal money to help clear that land and get so it becomes more marketable for affordable housing? Or is that just something that is an impossible thing to do? It's up to the owner of the property.
David, I think very few things are impossible. So
Yeah.
I think something will happen. Are you talking about the old hospital in Marquette?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the
I
old
think
house.
something will happen there. I don't know what exactly yet. It's definitely on our radar to be working on. We've got ongoing conversations, and I think that we'll find a way that is, for me, talking about maybe either brownfields or getting creative. That's one of the top properties in my mind that we need to do something with. There's a few properties in Marquette that we have opportunity to develop on, but that one is so close to NMU, to a neighborhood, right near 3rd Street, which is part of our downtown corridor. We need to make sure that that doesn't become an obsolete property. So we are working hard to see what we can do there. I don't think it'll be too long before we are able to find a solution.
Cody, anything? I'm sorry, Commissioner, anything you want to add?
I would agree with that, but that site would definitely require a strong public and private partnership to make that a viable area to develop anything on. And to what Mayor Smith was saying, like, the location itself is ideal for building some pretty significant amount of housing units there. And the area is already zoned mixed use, so it wouldn't be unrealistic either to even have some small local businesses in that area as well.
So we'll move on to this, but one other piece of, one other chunk of property, which is a really nice chunk where the state and the university come together on for affordable housing for students or graduates or anybody, is their Summit Street apartments they took down. That's a huge chunk of property attached to the campus, not as big as the Apollo hedge fund property, but it's a big, but you're right, there are sections all over the city. So that's encouraging to know that the city and the county and the region and the legislature is going to try to work together. So let's, I don't want to keep you too long. Talk to me about what your vision is of the cities of the future. I'm of the age where you have more memories behind you than ahead of you, but I sort of like to think I could dream about the next 5 years. What do you think about Marquette and Houghton and Escanaba, Iron Mountain, Sault Ste. Marie? What do you think about our cities of the future, rural cities of the future in the Upper Peninsula, or in Michigan for that matter? What do you see?
I think everyone's dealing with a lot of challenges right now, but I also think there's a great amount of opportunity. So it's a really nice time for us in the city of Marquette and all the cities in the UP, all the municipalities, whatever that size may be, to take a step back, reflect on kind of the insanity that has been COVID, financially, emotionally, what that meant for us for work and Zoom versus in person and all those things, and use that as a catalyst to ask the hard questions. What do we want the future to look like? So I know in Marquette, some of our goals is we're looking at moving forward while also recognizing our history and our past. So, a big goal that we've been working on is that Iron Ore Heritage Trail, which is links many communities here in the Marquette area. And there's a potential grant that could do some really exciting things that we approved support for last night. But in addition, we've been trying to get some more interpretive signage to help connect us to our past and kind of bridge that gap to the future, while also looking at things like climate change. Lakeshore Boulevard is a huge one, but when we do a new road, we want to make sure that we're looking at bigger floods potential. When we're looking at potential recycling, which is a bit of an issue or question in Marquette right now with a grant that we have for recycling carts and the potential mandate of those carts, which hasn't quite been determined yet, but I understand folks' concerns and we're looking at that. But, we're trying to be innovative and push on a lot of fronts, and we'll adapt as we go. But I see bright things in the city of Marquette, city of Houghton, city of Sault Ste. Marie, Iron Mountain, Escanaba, Munising, all those great places. And I think we are really better together. I think we all do better. The tide rises when, that concept of when one does well or when we all do well, we do better together. So I appreciate being able to lean on some of those folks and see what they've been up to and look to the future. Thanks, David.
Commissioner, add anything?
Yeah, I would just add that, innovation and creativity really is going to be a very large part to play for a lot of us up here in the UP. We have to do things differently than a lot of the communities downstate would have to, for a lot of the reasons we already talked about. But, I think taking, Iron Mountain, Houghton, the Sioux, Munising, Escanaba, Marquette, taking essentially those micropolitan communities that for the UP region, for us to really focus on being the economic drivers for the region as a whole, I think is going to have a really big impact on it. And working on things like increasing, our technology capabilities, while also working on keeping the place vibrant, focusing on keeping the environment that we've all come to know and love in the UP as vibrant as it is, while still moving forward as the economic cities for the UP.
Well, thank you. In closing, I just want to say I've been doing, those were great comments from both of you. I really, really appreciate it. They're very interesting. It starts a lot of conversations for us in the future. I've been checking around the UP on future leaders of the election. It's happened across the country. Future leaders like you that are now leaders, a new generation of leaders coming in. And I was thinking there are 5 of you under 40 on the commission now. Is that right? Is there 5? 4 of you, 4 under 4. Okay, 4 of you. Not that there's anything wrong with being over 40. I just want to point that out as someone who's been there way over 40. But I thought it was sort of fun. I was wondering if it'd be a great poster, a picture. It's sort of the Marquette squad, the 4 of you together. I just have this great vision of this new leaders at Marquette, and as a motivational tool, we got to get one of those pictures like the squad in Washington with you. But in any case, thank you for what you do. I know being an elected official in cities and school boards is a really hard job, and especially right now with our country so divided and people in some sectors so angry and other sectors people hurting so bad to struggle their way through the economy and their kids and things like you all raised, housing and taxes and childcare. So thank you for what you do. And thank you for sharing this half hour with us. I really appreciate it. And I'm sorry to interrupt, do this during your dinner hour, but thank you. You probably don't get to eat dinner very often, but anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. You're welcome.